and my brother and I started in Hopkins, Minnesota. Continuing into high school, and then getting a chance to represent USA at U20s. Well, it was U19s at the time. When I was just turned 15, I made the team when I was 14 and got to go to England. That was one of my biggest breaking and eye-opening points in my rugby career, because I thought I was the shit. Excuse my language if you don't like my language. But I thought I was the shit, and I was not. So I got to start against England in the first game, and I was like, "Ooh, this is pretty crazy. Like, are you sure?" And Brenna's like, "Yeah, go for it, and I'll do it." And I played, got my ass kicked, and then didn't play the next game, and played 5 minutes of the third game. And so in my head, I was like, "What'd I do wrong? Like, what happened? Like, what? Like, I'm a starter, because I started the first game, which is not how it goes." And so it definitely set me straight and got me in a good track of how hard it is to be a starter and how hard it is to play at that level, and what it took to get there on your own time. Because being at camp is only so much time, and you can't get all the individual work in. And so going through U20s up until I was 20 years old definitely helped me out, put me into a good platform. But then I switched my focus on to 7s instead of 15s. And so then dropped out of college to pursue rugby full time and really try to get into that pool. And luckily made the World Cup team for 7s in 2013 in Moscow, Russia. And then got contracted after that, moved out to California, trained with them full time, and with the hopes of Olympics in 2016, which fortunately worked out. It was a huge roller coaster of ups and downs, and it turned out to work. Then now, after the Olympics, I took a break to have hip surgery and focus on something stable, which I found firefighting to be my stability. And they are really, really supportive of my rugby career. And they're helping me pursue World Cup for 2021 this year in September in New Zealand for 15. So fingers crossed there. I'm sorry, the delay is definitely throwing me off. But if you guys want more detail on any specific piece of it, and for the girls that are on, I see a couple that I got the honor and opportunity to coach. You guys know how open I am, and just take the floor and ask some fun questions.
Katie, I would like to ask a question real quick.
Yeah.
How has your recovery from hip surgery affected your training and preparation for the Olympics?
It's definitely a big difference just in body awareness. I think it's more of just age instead of my hip. My hip did very, very well in the healing process. It's very strong. I barely notice it. But the rest of my body, it takes more time to warm up and to cool down and all of the above. So just being aware of when I'm doing too much and when I need to do more recovery versus training. And prehab. Prehab is huge. I think a lot of people don't take advantage of it. Just prepping your body before you're injured. We always wait until we have a sprained ankle or a hip injury, until we focus on strengthening and making it at its prime, instead of doing it right off the bat. And so I take an extra half hour to myself before team warm-ups and to do my own thing, to activate and get ready.
Awesome.
Hey, KJ. Can you talk about the amount of work that you did, the amount that you trained, the amount of rugby that you played and practiced prior to you actually making a senior national team because it would be interesting for people to hear the work that it's not a case of I get there, then I start working. There is, I have to work with a goal in mind. So if you could talk about that, and also the sort of calorific intake that is needed when you are driving your body that hard.
Absolutely. That's a big part of it. For me, I was super fortunate to run into this guy, Ted Johnson, who wanted to train me, and I didn't have any funds. I was working 3 jobs, taking the bus job to job, and I ran into him at the gym, and he was like, "Get here at 6 a.m. and don't complain." And I was like, "Okay, that's pretty intense, you know." So I showed up, and he was like, "Okay, we're gonna do 2-a-days." And I was like, "I don't know what time schedule you think I have here, but I can't do that." And he's like, "You're gonna make it happen if you want to make World Cup. You know, like this is what we're gonna do." And he was absolutely right. I went to one showing where I had to pay for it myself with the Sevens girls, and it was a huge eye-opening experience where I had to really ask myself, what can I bring to the team that no one else can bring to the team? Because at that time, I was not in shape compared to these women. I was not strong. I wasn't smart. It was amazing the different level that it took. And I thought that I could be there, but I wasn't there yet. And so it took a lot more film analysis. It took writing notes. So every morning I would write down my sleep log, what I ate, everything. It was really, really, really tough. I was getting too little sleep, and so that's the only part of that time that I regret. But as a young athlete, that's what I could afford to do. But the sleep is super important. Your training is super important. It's a mentality. Like, you can't go into that situation without knowing your breaking point. Like, you gotta run until you die. And then you understand, I can keep going. You know, even when your body is stuck, it's literally shutting down. You feel like you're gonna puke, but you've been there before, and you know you can give it another 10 minutes. You know, so it's just knowing your limits, knowing what you're capable of, and giving it your all.
Kind of following up with what Bryn had asked as well, what can you tell us about like your nutrition and diet and how that plays a role into your training and your caliber of play?
Well, first of all, everyone is super different when it comes to every type of training, every type of position. That's why rugby is my favorite, because we have all different types of athletes. For myself, I had to gain weight, and so it was more about getting good nutrition in high quantity. So I was on like a 4-year plan of 5,000 calories a day, and it got me 5 pounds. So it was a constant struggle day to day of just having my alarm set in the middle of the night, waking up, eating some protein bars, that I could just get some calories in my body. Because we were doing 3-a-days, and every single day I'm out running everybody, because that's my job, is the workhorse. That's what I found that I needed to stand out as. I needed to keep going when everyone else doesn't want to. And so it was really hard for me to keep those calories and keep the weight on. So it's just different for everyone. When you're logging food, that's like the biggest thing I can encourage to any athlete is log what you eat. You'd be so surprised how much you don't even think about something you just grab and snack on that's really not the best fuel. You know, your body wants the healthiest, the purest food, and is going to run best off of it. The more processed you're eating, the more it lacks. So you're not going to be able to burn that fuel as fast. So it kind of depends.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer. Would anybody else like to chime in? I see people who,
Yeah,
oh, yeah, go ahead.
I have a question for, hey, KJ. So I gave a shout out to you yesterday in my presentation. KJ was on an Olympic pathway, and I just accidentally fell onto the U20 team for one tournament one time. And it was really interesting because there was this dynamic that I was older than I was a freshman in college, and all these kids were in high school. But I was like the rookie, and they tried to like bully me to go get ice, and I was like, I'm not doing that because none of you have driver's license. So I'm curious because I know because of what I've gone on to do and my kind of pathway through rugby is when you're younger than everyone else that you're competing and you're coming up against, and you're trying to put your ideas out there, or whatever you're trying to do, it often can get held against you that you're only 15, you're only 20, 25, 30, whatever you're at. I think you're maybe like 3 years younger than me. So I want to know, I'm just curious because I know there's some other people out here who, specifically like dealing either is a younger woman or, coaches young women, kind of what your mentality is to fight against people who tell you that you're too young, or, try to hold that, don't take account your skills and your talent into account. And they just say, they try to brush you off because of your age.
That's a really fun one. I like that. Well, first of all, no one's going to be able to tell you what you can and cannot do. So, right off the bat, take it with a grain of salt. It's something that you don't think is possible for you or whatever, but you can set your own limits. As a younger athlete, definitely learn some stuff. Like as myself coming into U20s, I definitely had a mouth and definitely had this mindset of I know the game. And just because I knew the game doesn't mean I had a good way of communicating it. So there's always things to learn. And the better you can communicate what you're trying to get off to different types of people, because everyone hears what you're saying differently, the better. And so, I think there's always ground to learn and to take information as a younger player on these teams, but also don't take everything your teammates or coaches even say to heart. Take it as okay, yeah, that possibility, but I could do that. Like if you're a forward and your coach is like, no, you don't kick, you're a forward. I take it as, okay, I'm going to go kick on my off time and I'm going to come back and be the best kicker. Like you can always do stuff on your off time just to prove it to them. It doesn't mean you have to have the verbal argument or just, there's so many things you can avoid and you can just take it on your own time and just prove it to yourself that you can do it. That answers, Marlo?
Yeah, I think so. I also am fueled by spite of haters. So I'm glad that you fall into that same categories of people telling you can't do something and then you just say, watch me, I'll do it anyway. So I like that. Yeah. Who else? Hannah Henry, I'm going to pick on you. Hannah Henry coaches at Kent State. She helps me in the ARU. So I'm going to pick on you, Hannah. It's because I know you. You're here on a Sunday, so what's your question for KJ?
I guess just for maybe, thanks for picking on me, by the way. For anybody that, maybe just starting out in rugby, I get a lot of players that don't even know what rugby is. They're like, oh, I get to hit people. Okay, cool. Let me join. What kind of advice do you have for those types of, players that are new to the game? They don't even know what it is. What kind of advice do you have for them?
That's majority of rugby players in the United States, so that's a really awesome question. I think you want to focus on the main things that you can't be coached. You can't coach someone how to bring passion into the game or how to just go all out. You know, when you get those players that come out and don't know what they're doing, but they're going to do it at 110%, those are the best just because they're easier to coach and direct. So, yeah, I mean, empower them as much as you can and give them the right to just go mess up. You know, sometimes it takes a lot of time to just feel it out. Like when you're offside and you get a whistle a few times, then you're gonna be like, okay, I don't want that to happen again, you know? But you'd rather them be shooting the gun to go hit someone, right? Instead of just waiting, being like, when do I go? So it's a different vibe. You want them to really be really interested in everything they can do. So tackling, passing, get the basics down. But then after that, they'll figure out their own flow in the game, which is the most exciting part.
I've got another one for you as well. This is kind of, I guess, an open question to the group since there are people that fill so many different roles who are on this call. But just thinking for me personally, like I was a good rugby player. I wouldn't say I was ever high level. I think I could have been had I put a little more work into it. But I, somewhere along the line, decided that I really loved administration. And, you know, thanks to NSCRO and now NCR for bringing me aboard and helping me realize that. And I know, you know, there are people who are like, I love rugby and I want to be involved, but which avenue do I do that through? And so my question to you and kind of for anybody else who wants to chime in, like, how did you decide that this was the way you wanted to express your passion for rugby? How did you decide that being a player was the way you were going to do that?
I really do love being a player. I also love being a coach, just to relate with players and mainly like high school, college women. But I totally understand what you're saying. You're probably the best administrator, organizer. There's a couple that just really fit the role, right? And it's with rugby, that's the best part is everyone can be a part of the community. I have a couple girlfriends that tried to play and just didn't like it, but they still come to every game because they just love the community, right? So I mean, I think you just got to try everything out because you're never really gonna know. And for me, it was I'm gonna just go as far as I can and see what I can do because when it started in my head is when I found out rugby was going to be in the Olympics in 2010, and I said to myself, I'm going to be in the Olympics, and that was just something to myself where I tried to put a bookmark of like, this is what I'm going to do in 6 years, and I didn't realize how hard it was going to be and what was entailed or anything, but just having that mindset to get that done. Words are powerful. I mean, if you speak something in and you just make it something that is true to you, not many people can stop that momentum. If you hit a roadblock, like I'm starting to lean more towards coaching because I love getting that feedback from players more than I like to play for higher levels, you know? So like now I'm steering off to go towards coaching. And it might steer over to developing women's rugby in the United States in general. Or it might go so many different directions that I hope it does. But you never really know. And things pop up. The connections, rugby community, will bring you in so many different directions. You never know. Just trying to be a part of it as much as you can.
Yeah. Can anybody else speak to that kind of? Yeah, Bryn. Bryn, you're muted. Bryn, you're muted.
Sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Old man, old heart. These newfangled computers. So, you've had a lot of coaches. There are coaches on here who've had players go to higher level teams and come back. And that's always an interesting experience for a coach because players bring new ideas back. And similarly for yourself, you've had coaches and they've taken you to certain levels, and then you've had a higher level coach. You had coaches that you agree with. You have had coaches that you've butted heads with at different levels. Some of that is just, at the practice level, meeting level, but some of it has been at a large program philosophy level, I think. I think it would be interesting to hear about two things: as a player, how to adjust to different levels of coaching and coaches who give you different tools to put into the toolbox, and similarly, for the coaches that are on, I think it's important for coaches to hear from the player that they will get new ideas and they will bring them back. And for those players, it really helps if they're accepted ideas when they bring them back. And how do you communicate to your coach when you bring them back? I know that's a lot of questions.
Oh, it's okay. You know my history well, so. I think the main thing is just being transparent. Especially if you get to higher levels. Well, I shouldn't even say that because I think all levels. But transparency is key with your players, with your assistant coaches, everyone. The more the players know where your direction is, the more they can execute and be the best at that thing you're trying to get them to do. I think that's the main thing I had a hard time with some coaches is them giving me enough objective in a drill. And I didn't understand why we were doing a drill. Like, how does this relate to our game plan? How does this relate to rugby in general, And I just want that simple question of, this is how it relates, and just do it kind of thing, And there was a couple coaches that were just trust me. And we got 11th out of 12 in the world, and it was just frustrating because it's like, I trusted you and it didn't work. So you're putting me in a position where I can't study up and be the best at this drill, let alone the game. So there's the direction you want your team to go. I really think the more the player knows, the better. And just being able to explain that point that you have towards the drill in multiple ways so that all different types of learners understand what you're trying to say, whether it's hands-on, doing it, walking through it, or putting codes out, getting a whiteboard, doing game film, like anything that you can broaden your skills on so that different athletes can understand it the same way you understand it. That was the biggest thing I learned as a coach, to be transparent as I can with my players. I also think they can learn a lot from your mistakes. So I love talking to my players about all of my stories, not just my successful ones. I see Cece on here. She can fully say that. And so I think that's a big part of getting on a good page with your athlete. It's just transparency. And we're all human. Sometimes we do a drill and it doesn't work. And that's fine, like how can we adapt and move on to the same concept, but so that those players understand what we're trying to get at. That's my main thing with that. Does that answer your question, Brent?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
Bring me back.
I might add in on that. Going through coaching the girls' high school team in '99 is when I got started coaching the girls' team. I mean, I had done a lot of coaching before that, but one of the things that I kind of learned at an early stage was listen to the players. When I first started, the girls didn't know anything about rugby, and Katie was in like second grade, I think. And so when I started trying to figure out how am I going to teach a bunch of high school girls how to play rugby when I've been coaching Division One men and Division One women, and to break it down to where they could understand, how to hit somebody, how to tackle them, how to fight for the ball. Um, and Katie kind of led the way in that by telling me how to do it. By not actually telling me, but she came out and said, when the girls were running some drills, and she jumped out there, and these are sophomores, juniors, seniors, and yells at them, "That's not the way you do it. You got to do it like this. You hold the ball like this." And I said, well, maybe I should be a little more firm. But it's what I say to the coaches is listen to your players, because and try to analyze where they're coming from. It's definitely a help. And I think that was the biggest thing I learned from coaching youth players, youth rugby. So there you go.
That actually brings to the point of bringing back to, as an athlete, the coach that thought I could do more than I thought I could do, such as my dad and Bryn, and they were like, nope, that's not good enough. Like, I remember one time Bryn sent me to the try zone for a timeout during practice because I needed to cool my head. Just like, go over there and think about it, and I did. I went over there, I thought about the whole thing we were doing, which was lineouts at the time, which is something I'm really passionate about, and came back with a better mindset of our attack plan. And it kind of clicked because he was seeing what I was doing at the time and was like, nope, not good enough, go over there. And it was great. I mean, something like that, hold your athletes to high expectations and let them know that you are holding them to high expectations.
To that point, KJ, and what you talked about coaches and how coaches communicate the game plan and what people hear and how different players don't hear the same thing. In that specific situation, I think from what I remember, you got sin binned, timed out, but it was just one of those things where I needed to communicate that information to you in a different way. And I came over and I said, and this is why what you're saying I don't think will work in this situation. And I left you again to think about it, and you came back. All you needed to know was why. But we were in the middle of a drill. There were a lot of people moving around. There were assistant coaches. It was a big squad. And at that moment, I just didn't have that piece of time to explain to the why that you needed. But once you had the why, you weren't frustrated anymore. And it goes to your point about how different players learn differently, and how, as coaches, we have to understand that we have to communicate differently and take the time to communicate differently. So
I wanted to ask about the culture. And can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, now we can't hear you.
Oh, Carrie. Carrie, you're muted.
Oh, okay. I thought I'd unmute.
You're
Okay.
good.
So my question was about culture and the idea of for all-star teams or even just groups of players coming together for the first time, culture put on by the coaches versus culture built from within the team. Can you talk to us a little bit about what worked, what didn't work, how you use it now, and especially with high schoolers who are going on to play at higher levels at some camps, but then come back to their high school team, or we have great alums who go away to college, but then come back. And how can I incorporate more of their idea of culture without imposing my idea of, hey, forced fun is the way to get everyone to enjoy it?
Yeah, that's forced fun is definitely part of every level team. I find what works best for players coming back from a higher level or even just a different level, just different styles of coaching. If you give them an outlet like a Google Doc and just say, hey, I'm super proud. This is awesome that you guys got to do this opportunity. Give me a couple things that you would like to see transfer into our program or some things you really liked while you were there. Because then it gives them an opportunity to tell you all about it, but not in the middle of practice in front of everybody and say, no, this isn't how it's done, you know? So it gives them an opportunity to really express themselves and tell you what worked in their opinion. And then you can figure out a way of implementing it in your own style. There's a lot of fun drills that come from different teams that don't necessarily fit into like your continuity style in your team or whatever. But there's little tweaks that'll work that out. Personally, I find the continuity and the culture comes from players, and if you can just support them into like making that happen, it's really hard to do without force fun. But try to just, I would just say, give them boundaries and like this. Our team's about respect. Our team is about fun. Our team's about whatever the 5 things you want to make your mission statement or your focus on, and just make them non-negotiables. Because that's the best part about rugby is you have all of these different characters and you come together for one goal and you become really close friends once you forget all of the drama or whatever it is from high school or college, and, you know. So that's a hard thing to create, but it does come naturally eventually with the girls. That's hard. Yeah, I don't know. Did that answer it all, Gary?
Yeah, that did. Was there any one great team that you played with that had a particular cultural like thing? I know when I played with Nova, we had the Nova beads, right? And the senior player gave it to a rookie, and I know people in their 40s and 50s who still have their Nova beads. Was there anything like that that worked in any of the teams you played with?
Yeah, so I play with the Twin City Amazons, and every year going to nationals, or if we don't make it to nationals, we do it at different tournaments. But you have your like Secret Santa draw, and whoever you draw, you give them a little package for each day you're on travel. So it could be a protein bar and like a coffee, or it could be as elaborate as like a photo album. You know, like some people get really creative. Some people make blankets with their names on it, or it just makes it more personable. And I really, really like that because it gives you something to look forward to every day. And it goes, every player gets something.
Hey, Mike, I know you raised your hand before. I saw you. I knew.
Yeah, I just had a question for KJ. Could you talk? So, I coached college women for a while, and there were some that, you know, had the skill and had the drive to kind of go on to higher level stuff. But some of them who do have that skill and do, you know, want to go on to higher level stuff, they get a little nervous about the idea of, you know, for instance, you stopping going to school to pursue rugby and, you know, taking jobs that they might not want to be in a certain city where they need to be, or, you know, whatever the case may be. Can you talk a little bit about just that thought process of, how you kind of, decided to do these things that some players coming out of college, especially now, with the job market and everything, they're kind of nervous to forego those kind of paths that people think that they should take to pursue rugby.
Yeah, that's a really tough situation because there's no real money in rugby for women. So it's a real question you have to ask yourself. For me, school is one of the things I'm not that great at. I'm back in school now, but so it was an easy decision for me. That physical outlets is where I excel. So I was like, I'm going to drop out for now, pursue rugby, because there's always an opportunity to go back to school, in my opinion, at that time. And so I dropped out to go to train for World Cup stuff, but then things pop up. Like, I got a full ride scholarship with the Olympic program as soon as I was contracted after World Cup. And I started going back to school, and I should be graduating this year. And it just works around the rugby schedule. So it kind of depends. I really do think things pop up, and you just got to be ready for opportunity when it does. Follow your gut, because it's scary, and there's always going to be things that you're going to have to prioritize if you really do want to follow rugby.
Can't we hear her?
Can't hear you, no.
Listen.
The dog's on it, so this problem will be solved, I'm sure.
Yeah, Wheeler. That's Wheeler. Great little dog.
He doesn't look like
Take care of him. Oh,
Put your mic closer to your face.
we heard you that time.
Okay.
Oh, that's good. That's better.
Okay. Where was I?
You were just talking about you have to follow your gut, and if you really want to go for it, then you have to trust yourself.
Yes. Thank you, Smarta. Yeah, I mean, if you have the physical talent in college, the biggest difference between college and international or next level is mentality. So it's something you got to just do on your own. And it's that growth of pushing through and really testing your limits, I think. Like, every coach is going to give you a different set of tools. And like Brent says, you pick the tools you like and you toss the tools you don't. And that's all about the growth in rugby. But then it comes down to how smart you are with those tools and how far you can push yourself. So if it comes down to your girls questioning themselves in that area, I would definitely give them a little bit of a confidence boost and tell them that it really comes down to how much they want.
Can you talk a little bit more about like building up that mental strength that you said is the biggest difference between college play and out of college high level rugby? Can you speak a little bit more about like kind of preparing yourself mentally just for that and for the journey to come?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I grow the most when I fail, personally, because it hurts more, and it's one of those things that you don't want to ever happen again, So it comes down to when you're doing the Bronco, right? That's a total mental test because you can physically run that Bronco in under 6 minutes, and it's all mental. You get to the line, and it's like, okay, I'm 10 seconds behind the mark. You have to speed it up. Your body is just like, I don't want to. And you got to be able to say, yeah, you're gonna, you know? And you get to the point where you end the Bronco, and you still have a little bit left in your tank, or you can still breathe, and you know that you didn't give it your all. You know, it's little lessons like that where you get beat out by someone that beat you by 5 seconds, and you realize, did you really push it, or did you just do what you could at the time? You know, I think there's a lot of complacency of just like, this is good enough. It's like, no, you can definitely drop 15 seconds on that and be hurt, you know, or him or whatever. It's definitely holding yourself to higher standards and being tougher on yourself on that. But I've also been known for being too hard on myself, so I think it goes both ways. Anything you can do to challenge yourself, a challenge a day, like put yourself in a situation where you're uncomfortable and try to push through it. And that's, so like right now I'm in school, and that's something I'm really not great at, but I'm finding a lot of joy in it because it's a challenge every day. And that's what you got to find for sports. You know, when you're challenging yourself for anything, find something that you're not so great at and just do it, like juggling or burpees or half moons where you're going up and down on the pad, and just do it until you want to puke. You know, like test your limits.
Nice. That's great advice. I see some people on here like Cece and Allie, and I know that you guys are certainly on a track for playing high-level rugby. Was there anything specific that either of you wanted to ask Katie about or know about, and anybody else who I don't know who applies to that?
I have a question for KJ. I'm Meg and a fellow Amazon teammate of hers, and I'm also an athletic trainer, and I've had the fortunate opportunity to watch KJ grow in her rugby career from covering her games as a high school player to watching her in flex side and with USA Rugby and with the Amazons. And I also know over your career, you've had a lot of different injuries. And so I'm just wondering, like, you've had such a strong, positive attitude and leadership throughout the rugby community, and you just keep going and you're so determined. Can you talk about how you've been able to overcome your injuries, how you've been able to take the time to rest so that you could fully recover, so that you could come back as a stronger athlete to be able to go to the Olympics or, you know, play higher level? Can you address any of that?
Absolutely. I always think this ties back to my dad. When every athlete knows that injuries are the most frustrating thing you can go through, just because we hate sitting still and we hate watching from the sideline and all of the above. But my dad always said, "You're going to come back stronger. Like, chill out. You'll come back stronger. You know, just do what you got to do." And it takes the pressure off of rushing back into the game. I remember one season in high school, I rolled my ankle and I got invited to select sides. And I was like, I'm going to go. And I was like, you're not going. And I ran away and went. And I got kicked out. But it was a huge learning lesson for me because I didn't play at my best. I did mediocre. And it really made me question, like, the girl on the sideline that would have had my position if I wasn't here, she probably would have done better. She would have filled the role much better. She would have been able to get to where she needed to get. Like, all of these questions flooded my mind, and I was really selfish with it, and I took that position because I didn't care. I wanted to play. And so that was a big turning point in my career of the bench is strong, chill out, you know, like trust your teammates, and that's the difference between a starter, a sub, a non-traveling reserve, everyone. That's the hardest part to figure out because you only want to be a starter, right? But every depth of your team is so important and on so many different levels. They bring a different energy, a different aspect to the team that you need. If you were all starter mentality, like I wouldn't want to be on that team. You know what I mean? It's just like the support system's not there. And I think that's a big humbling thing about having those injuries and having to sit on the side and understanding, okay, my role is not to play right now. What is my role? My role is to support my players that are on the team playing right now. How can I get them water? How can I support them the best I can support them, So I always try to focus on a different thing. Because if I just think about playing and being injured, I get really frustrated. And so I focus more on like, okay, how can I help her be the best she can be at this moment? And I feel like that really connects your whole team. But yeah, injuries, man. That's a big part of my career. Man.
Well, thank you, KJ. If there's no last minute pressing questions, anybody?
Okay. Yeah, I have a quick one. Sorry for being last minute, but I'm going back to that, like college player being like wanting to go higher level. Like, what would you say as like the best advice to like get your I guess your name out there, like get the right people like behind you, kind of like what would you say would the next step be?
There's a lot of talk to your coach. Your coaches have good connections, and they can send messages to any of the international coaches. And then it's the international coach's job to research that, right? They love anyone that comes to them. And it makes it a lot easier to be like, okay, this name from this place, and they can easily research you. I would definitely get some stats. So if you can do all of it, like your 40 meter, your Bronco time, get it all done legitly if you have the testing stuff for it. Do you? Okay, cool. Because that makes it way easier if it's timed down to the 0.00, because then they know it's legit on the 40 meters and your 10 meters and acceleration stuff. But basics. You'd be surprised how much the basics are the platform for everything. If you can't pass, are you going for 7s or 15s?
Either.
Okay. And you're a back?
Yeah.
I would really make sure you get past 10 to 15 meters. And you just need to hang a tire or a target in your backyard and just keep hitting it over and over and over. Switch hands over and over and over. You can't pass too much.
I just something to add to that as somebody who's been on the other end of that, looking at players. Part of this weekend is about select sides. This is taking the place of a select side event that we would normally be having, that Smarter would normally be running right now, and so there are plenty of levels for players to continue to go up. There's not the leap from college to national team. It is whatever's the next level up, and if you can perform well, what's the next level up? And if you perform well, what's the next level up? The coaches need to be videotaping all of their games. They do players a disservice by not videotaping games, because either they're not able to present evidence to the player about what they're doing well and what they're not doing well. There's no arguing with the video. It's like, do you see what you did? Do you see the angle that you ran, the angle that you could have run? And video of higher level play. So playing on a select side and having video of that anybody looks good playing against bad opposition, and it's really hard to make a judgment as a national level coach. You see a player and it's like, yeah, but a whole lot of people could have scored a try against that particular team. So you know, to back up what KJ is saying, hard numbers. What is your 40 time? And is there video of you running that 40-yard time? And are your timers all accurate? And Broncos and 300 shuttles, but also video of you playing. Coaches can't go to every camp. They can't come to you and see you. And so you've got to present them with as much visual evidence of your skill sets.
That's amazing. Yes. If you have any question, I just want to put it out there. If you're interested in select side sevens, playing internationally, you can also contact me. I'm not scary. You can let me know. I've played for a bunch of them myself, and they are really, really fun teams. No matter what kind of atmosphere or community you're looking for, they're all out there.
Thank you, KJ.
Thank you.
I think we will leave it there. We are already 5 minutes over 11 o'clock. So I just want to make sure everybody has time to take a long enough break before we get back to it in about an hour. We are going to have an awesome player panel set up for you guys. Emily, if this would be helpful for you, I think because they are all players who have experience playing select side and high level rugby. We're going to have Leanna Munter. We're going to have Allie Gallagher, who I think is on this call. It doesn't say her last name, but I think it's her. And Steffi Fran, and they have been 3 key participants of the All-Star events previously. So we wanted to ask them back and talk a little bit about their experiences playing select side and where they have kind of gone from there. So kind of, I guess, an extension of this call really is what it's going to be. It's going to be awesome. So please come to that. It will be at 2 p.m. Eastern time. For me, that's noon. I don't know what that means for all of you. But yeah, please join us in about an hour. We'll kick it off pretty much right on time. So thank you all so much for coming. KJ, thank you so much for talking about your experience. It's really, really valuable to have you here. So thank you so much. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Thank you.